Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is August 4th, and this is another version, an edition, and session of the MSP Initiative Live. I got my buddy Matthew Fox back on here. Matthew, you're going to be my co-host today. I'm going to put you right into the seat. No light fixture fixing today. All right, pal?
I can't be a co-host unless my rider details have been met.
Oh, do I got to send you like purple M&Ms?
I mean, wait, let's see. Your company's got like a seafoam green color, right?
Yeah, sure. I could send you those.
Yeah, man. I want to see them, but they got to have your initials on them.
Okay, I can do that. I think Sade can fire that right on up.
How are you doing today?
Might get it in the mail. I'm doing well, man. Let me do a quick housekeeping, and then we're going to talk shop a little bit. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Perfect. All right. So, if anybody hasn't been following us, I hope you all have. Of course, anybody listening afterwards, mspinitiative.com. This session, every other session will be there in podcast and video format. I know you love looking at me from various parts of the world. I'm in a hotel right now, actually, in Denver, but hey, it's all fun and games. Our 3 MSP community block parties, guess what? Now they're online. Washington, D.C., got Fort Lauderdale, got Orlando. I'm sure you can imagine the events that these are around. So if you want to learn more, we'll get into them in a little bit, but they are online and we're super excited about them. Now just coming out of CompTIA, ChannelCon, and various boat parties there. I'm in party mode. Lastly, but not least, Channel Strong Tour. We have 3 of these left for the rest of the year. Believe it or not, by the time it's all said and done, we would have had almost, I think it'll end up between 12 and 1,400 people have come out this year on the, where we'll end up coming out once the last 2 tours are done. So week 6, 7, and 8, end of September, middle of October, end of November. If you're in these areas, love to see you. And yeah, love just driving the bus, especially at the current gas prices. So definitely come out. It's tailgate style format. It's a lot of networking, and we love talking to people in person because, that's just how things are and should hopefully stay. So now that my housekeeping are done, what's going on over there, guys? Welcome to the show. And Matthew Fox apparently has a rider, but we're going to get him some tealish green M&Ms with my initials on them as his special requirement. How you doing there, pal?
I'm doing good, man. Contractual requirements, very important.
Yeah, no. Hey, listen, I like to make people feel good. So we're gonna fix those M&Ms.
I expect a full 36 months worth of M&Ms.
I mean, I could just send you Amazon coupons and you can buy them right from there. I don't want you to melt all at once.
So what do we got going on today?
Well, it's interesting. I had a couple messages after the last session about how strongly I felt about the end of the year. I call it bloodbath. That's going to happen in December and January. And yeah, I think we haven't even seen the worst of wherever this is going, right? I think the economy is in a bad place and getting worse. I just saw 2 large companies cut another, I think one was 10%, one was 20% of their personnel. Actually, HBO Max, after the Discovery Time Warner thing, Warner Brothers merger, I know that may not be the same thing. They just cut 70% of their staff. I think there's a lot more to come here, but I think the flip side and the upside to that, as I was trying to reassure the people who are like, maybe countering me on this economy thing, I said, this is a good thing. This could be a very good thing if you're positioned properly to capture, what is going to be the technology burden that people that aren't there anymore can't deliver, right? So, but this is also a time where people who are working internal IT jobs start MSPs, right? I mean, they say, hey, I don't have an internal IT job. And then they go and say, well, I can do IT for a lot of different companies. And that's how a lot of IT companies started, right? And, it's a little bit cyclical, right? Every 1, 2, 3 years, the bottom end of the MSP sandbox, the 10, 15, 20%. I know it varies of the people, new businesses go down, shut down, new businesses come up. And that's why there's always new faces at all the events we tend to go to. But it could be an exciting time, but it could be a very,
it's going to be a time. It's going to be a time of high anxiety for a lot of people.
That's what I was
And
just saying. Yeah.
the cyclical part's important to remember. A lot of these things happen many times over, and sometimes it's important to take a step back and realize that our scope of understanding or what we've experienced is not all encompassing. I was talking to a friend the other day who wasn't in the workforce in 2008, and I explained that to them, and it's like, we made it through that, we'll make it through this. Then we went back
100%.
to 2001. I worked at a nonprofit during 9/11. We lost all of our funding, but we made it work. And you hear that over and over again. And look, I entered the workforce in 2000, so that pretty much is like my scope of understanding between then and here. I'm sure that there are many, many instances that have taken place in past decades that are going to be similar in one way or another.
Yeah, and so I was able to drive out to Colorado Springs last night and meet a couple of partners, and one of the guys that I was connecting with yesterday said, "Hey, and right before the pandemic hit, like January 2020, he said his largest account was like half of his revenue quit. Right, they left." And they had to lay off a bunch of people, right? Because and you always hear like the financial people say, make sure not any one account is more than 33% of your revenue. But in this case, it was. And, he was able to diversify and come back from that strong, even though the pandemic kind of hit and it was a double whammy. But I mean, it's scary times. So, I guess the best, I know it's cliche, plan for the worst, hope for the best, but you definitely want to make sure that and have those conversations now with your personnel, right? Like if everybody expects their annual pay increases or bonuses or whatever, and you're trying to make sure that you're in a financially good place potentially going into a downturn, like you should have those conversations with your people ahead of time, and understand that you don't want to put people out on the street, but you also want to make sure people are in a good place, right? There's a balancing act there.
It's important that that gets communicated to staff. I mean, look, I'm not the owner of an MSP, so I'm not going to try and talk out of place here, but those are conversations that happen at Valiant. They're real conversations. And sometimes people may start looking for a new gig or something. They get nervous. But I tell you what, one of our junior techs messaged me a little while ago today. Hold on a second. I don't want to mess it up. Christian's a good dude. I got to say this exam properly. He had passed a, what was it, the AZ 900 or something like that the other day from Microsoft. And that was what was celebrated today. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't worried about what's next. It was, I'm going to continue improving myself because that's going to improve the experience of our customers. And it's also going to help my career. I'm not going to worry about everything that's going on. I'm going to prepare for what's happening tomorrow. That's so much more important.
100%. And listen, making sure everybody grows. Like you don't want anybody to become totally complacent. And this is another part of the conversation I had last night with one of my partners. He was like, "Listen, I have a really good L1, kind of on the edge of L2 tech. She's not super young, she's not super old, she's not making a ton of money. So she's like, hey, I got this offer for which is going to net me another $800 a month at this other gig. But the problem is that it's a step up, and sometimes people like it takes time, right, to build your skill set, and maybe sometimes you take too big of a jump and then it doesn't work and then you get knocked back, right? And so we all know that it takes experience comes with actually learning on the
Making
job,
mistakes.
right? And then like breaking it and putting it back together again. But some people actually are classroom kind of exam people too, right? That's not me. I'm a break it, put it back together guy. And I think a lot of people are that way. But then some people are really good test takers, right? Like if they go in, like right now, what's happening, I don't know how many people are up to date. I know we've talked about it a lot, but Microsoft with the partner program changes, right? You need to actually pick a direction in terms of competency. And then you need to have people within your organization take the exams and the testing in order to actually get there, in order to get as part of the mix to get to your 70% partner score that you need to in order to remain a Microsoft partner once this all goes into effect.
Mm-hmm.
They could change their mind though. But anyway, that's the current status. And so like, it's not a bad idea to get your people to go through some of that, right? Because it helps the organization get to their status. It helps everybody learn downstream, but at the end of the day, there's just some things that you should prepare for, right? Like instead of waiting and for the help desk ticket to come in and then trying to learn it on the fly, there actually would be beneficial for the everybody to plan certain learning stages as you go along, so not everything is a fast fire, right?
Absolutely. You want to be calm, cool, and collected at all times. If something's going wrong, if something's going well, that's the kind of mode that we should try and operate in. And a lot of that comes from preparation.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. One of my old bosses, one of the guys from IBM that I talked about the other day, used to say, you know, it was the 5 Ps. Was it proper planning prevents piss poor performance? He put that extra P in there to emphasize it a little bit. But yeah, Gary's right. That was always a big part of making sure that your business and even your career has a certain level of resiliency. You have to be ready for what's next. And that's usually meaning being 2 steps ahead of where you are right now. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that there's a what I call collaborative approach to the IT business, and then there's also the you know every shit's always on fire approach, and like everybody's always burnt out.
Yeah,
That's
are,
usually
are
that's
there
what ends
people
up
out there that look for that approach? I would like to work in a fast-paced environment while everything's breaking. Got a job for me? Come on.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that sometimes you got to ask yourself that question, be like, is that really what I want? Or do I want to take the time to figure this out, get my skill set in order, have everything in a row, and then be the one who's kind of deciding where I'm going, as opposed to being worried about where I'm going to end up next.
Well, it's interesting because another part of the conversation that I had last night was like sales seems to be one of those roles where like every 2 to 3 years, like there's burnout, right? And then
Yeah.
like you move on, like it ends up being like a move on, right? Um, 7 P's of readiness. I see it. Um, so that's like when you're in a sales role, you're in that hunter role, which I know not everybody does. Like 2 to 3 years is about right. But like in a tech role, right? If things are, not the best, it could be even less than that. Or it could be, hey, they're there for 10 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
building the correct environment to make it not so frustrating all the time is what really swings that pendulum either way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I think the longest time I spent in an IT, like a hands-on IT position, was like 7.5 or 8 years. The shortest was 3 months. And it was because of the atmosphere. It was because of the level of pressure, which usually wasn't even necessary. It was just, trying to get people to work as not even efficiently, just work as much as possible. That's not how you get work done. That's how you make mistakes. That's how you make rash decisions. And that's how, 6 months from now, you're lamenting on the fact that you made a rash decision 6 months before. And that is an excellent sign to go, hey guys, I don't want to work here anymore, and go find something else. And I'm not trying to encourage people to do that, but I think that that's the kind of thing you have to look at. What is it that I take away from the workplace every day? I do work, I get compensated, but how satisfied am I? Do I feel good about what's going on? Am I excited for whatever's going to be learned next? And you really want to make sure that you answer those questions with a yes daily more than a no. When the no's happen more than the yeses, that's your sign to figure something out.
I'm going to expand on that in a second. I see Brian says, what about the 4 F's of sales? Maybe we can come up with this.
Wait,
I'm
I think
waiting
it's the
for it.
same word 4 times, no?
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's got to be a two. It's not. He says it's not. It's just there's got to be a two-way street, right? I love
Yeah.
like I read it. I read somebody. I hate to say I read it the other day in the MSP subreddit, and he was like, "Hey, I got this job. It's find them, peel them." Or he's going into the 4 F's. I'm waiting for the other two. And he was like, "Hey, I got this offer for a better gig." He's like, "But I feel really good in the place I'm at now. How should I approach it?" And I'm like, "Listen, like the onus shouldn't always be on management or the owner to like understand the crystal ball, right? They're responsible to make sure that they can pay everyone and that the business is healthy, but like you're responsible for also communicating back too." And so I think that there's this, you know, complete diametrically opposite scenarios when like, hey, you're a sysadmin, hopefully the place is on fire and like it's like low pressure, right? Versus an MSP land, you're serving so many customers, it's like everything's always something happening or else like what's going on, right? So, some people are designed for, one, some people are designed for the other, some people can morph, right, into different things. But by the way, the 4 F's are find them, feel them, F them, and forget them. Okay. I got you, Brian. It doesn't have to always be that way, buddy. By the
Wait,
way.
that third F, what was that?
Oh,
Filet?
he says that's the K model. Oh boy. You know, I hear you. I hear you. I actually just saw in the they're already starting to see potential agreement changes from that side, you know, post acquisition. We'll see how it all ends up. I'm sure we've all speculated, but it's very interesting, right? You talk to people who have been in sales forever, Brian, and like the handoff between the guy, the hunter, right, the closer, and account management. That's a pitfall that in a lot of sales organizations. Let's be fair, right? Um, for some reason that gets jungled, bungled, or just not even done at all, right? You just disappear, and then somebody calls back for help and they can't get it. Yeah, that's probably not the best experience for the person on the, you know, who's on the swipe the credit card side. But unfortunately, you know, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here. Like there is a pressure situation, you know, when there's a high quota, almost an unreachable quota. Some of these hunter people literally are, you know, riding by the seat of their pants to try and hopefully catch that number. And then sometimes like they say that, and then you know they're not even through, you know, into Q3, and they hit, you know, they kind of are ahead of schedule, right? But everything is based on, and again, depending on the scenario, especially the VCPE guys, right? I mean, a lot of the companies in that position, like the gun is definitely loaded and behind them to try and hit a higher and higher and higher number because, you know, it's all about, you know, growth, right? Or at least it was. Now all of a sudden it's about profitability as the interest rate continues to rise. But I don't totally disagree with you, Brian, about, you know, the four Fs. He says, then it is all your base belongs to us. Yeah. Well, you
I,
know, I'm not,
I,
I mean, you're not, it's not new, right? I mean, this is the world we all have been working in for some time.
I feel like we can create some standards and practices again around these, like the 7Ps, the 4Fs. This is good stuff. We got to write an SOP on the 4Fs, the 7Ps. There's a couple of Qs probably in there, some
Well,
asterisks.
well, I think number one, let's run our businesses correctly. Let's treat our people, you know, well. Let's keep them there and coming back to do more with us. And then like now that foundation has to be, hey, this is how we want to work moving forward. And whether you have 1,000 account managers or 10, like there's just certain things that you need in order to do what you do for your downstream end customer, right? Um, Being able to get a hold of somebody is important, whatever the problem is. And I think sometimes people struggle with that. And number two, understanding what you're dealing with. I find it a little bit crass when they say, well, you just didn't read the agreement. And I was like, what do you mean I didn't read the agreement? Yeah, I read the agreement. I couldn't get a hold of anyone to actually follow it. You know, like that happens way too often, in my opinion now.
Oh, it's nonsense. I've walked away from significant relationships with businesses in the past for pulling things like that. You know, we talk about, I mean, the word partner is used a lot within this industry. And, you know, again, like you were saying before, everything is a two-way street. That agreement should be here to protect both you and me. And if it's not, I don't want to have to deal with you.
And
That's what it comes down to. And it's not always easy to be able to say that and go on to, you know, product X or Y or Z because of commitments. But I think that's something that you kind of have to establish in the very beginning. And I'm not saying take a
yeah,
firm hand. It's just like, look, I'm not going to deal with the nonsense.
well,
Again,
and
not an owner, so my views are going to be a little warped. Plus, it's me; they are
no,
going to be warped.
that's okay. That's okay. I think, you know, listen, I don't know if you know, and you said you're not the owner, but you know, when a contract is presented to a downstream end customer, sometimes they ask for small changes, right? I mean, if
Mhm.
it's not unreasonable, then a change is
Look,
made.
you mark the thing up. You have a legal counsel look at it. Everyone's happy. Great. Sometimes that fine print feels like it's been written. You ever see the piece of rice that you can get with like your whole name on it?
Yeah,
That's what the fine print sometimes feels like. Is
yeah. Well,
the fine print has an asterisk and a little cross next to it. You got to go to page 83, put the paper upside down, put some lemon juice on it, apply heat, and then you can get to the fine print.
I, I'm not even pointing fingers, right? I've heard of people who are like, hey, I knew it really early on I wasn't going to stay around with whatever the solution was, and I put in my notice, and they said it was too early to put the notice in. That I was only allowed to put the notice of non-renewal in between certain days.
Yeah, I think that only spaceship launches should have windows as well defined as that.
Yeah.
Ouch.
I wasn't a fan of that response with, hey, you can't put the notice in right now. And I'm like, that's weird. Okay. Friend is on one hand on your shoulder, partner is two hands on your shoulder sometimes.
Mm.
Brian, did you have a phone call with somebody recently? You want to share? Like, sounds like you're a little bit salty.
Hey, if Brian wants to, maybe he should jump in for me. I got a meeting I got to get on at 1:30. I just got the
Sure.
notification for it.
Well, that's okay. That's all right. Well, Brian seems to be a chatter, but that's okay. You need to go do your meeting. No worries. We'll talk about other industry news. But yeah, no, it's interesting times, and I'm excited for the future, but I also want to be practical about
Cautious
what I need.
optimism is what
Yeah,
you're
what I
talking
need.
about there.
What
Yeah,
what I need to run the business, right? I mean, like there's multiple things, and it's not any one thing, but I feel like I only have so many hours in the day, and I don't want to constantly be concentrating on this area if I don't have to.
absolutely. I agree. Unfortunately, like I said, I have to head out of here. But
No
George, you
worries.
have a great one. Everyone that's listening, have a great week.
I owe you some
All right.
M&Ms now. See ya.
That's it. It's on. It's recorded. It's going to be on YouTube. I've got proof. I'm going to get over my
Yeah,
legal counsel if you mess with me. I'm getting those
yeah,
M&Ms. Have a good one.
yeah. You got it, man. Talk to you. All right. Moving right along. Matthew was a good time. And Brian is still thinking about the next thing to type. Because I feel like he just came off a phone call with somebody and he's venting. I could be wrong, just a guess. All right, other things that are happening in industry news, other than it seems like the world has converged in Chicago for ChannelCon, and now everything's starting to, I think today's the last day. And I'm sure interesting things will come post ChannelCon, and I can't wait to hear what they are. I unfortunately had to leave early and bounce out here in Denver, which wasn't a bad thing, by the way, because Denver's thankfully good weather right now, and a little exercise does the body good.
I guess. I guess you
There's
can't
Brian.
hear me.
I can hear you, Brian. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was going to tell you that sales is probably the most difficult job in a company, and it's hard to find. Hard to find good ones.
No argument.
They come and go. And
salespeople have or good salespeople are wired like their hair's on fire a little bit, and I guess I lost mine as part of that, but like they're just a little bit high wired, which is good, but they can't. That could also be bad. Like there's a fine line between productive and crazy. But yeah, sales is a tough cookie, especially technical sales.
And some people cash in their future for sales now and hurt the next person in that role.
Yeah, the person that comes behind them,
or the person that has to install it or support it.
Did you have a bad story there, Brian? Bad salespeople?
No, just I get upset sometimes when salespeople blatantly lie.
Well, I mean, if somebody's telling you something completely false in order to get you to, sign on the dotted line, I mean, that's just straight up room for you to walk out the door on that, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's not right. It's not true.
But potential clients do silly things like sign contracts and they complain that it's not what they signed, and they get told they have a contract and they'll take them to court. So it's sort of like,
well, the whole point of the contract is to enforce it, right? I mean, let's be fair. I mean, I'm sure, some businesses look at it and say, hey, it's not worth the aggravation. And let's be fair. I mean, ever talk to an MSP that services lawyers and law firms? They tell you every time, contract's only as good until somebody wants out. And then how much and how far do you want to spend your time, money, and resources to enforce it? I know a guy in San Francisco Bay Area. It's a long time ago. It's like maybe 2015. And he had a law firm, signed him to a 3-year deal. And a year into the 3-year deal, they said, we're out. We're not doing this anymore. We're not paying you anymore. And he's like, dude, I have this contract, I have expenses, this and the other. Like, that's okay. We're going to go with somebody else. And so they went to court. And of course, the law firm, basically sends their own people. They didn't outsource it to another firm. and basically a year in on, on litigation to fight the balance of the 2 years on the contract, he finally got to the point where he was like, it's going to cost me more when it's all said and done fighting this, even though I have a signed contract, even though it's ironclad, than the value of the remaining 2 years.
Yeah. Well, our philosophy is if you're unhappy, you should go.
Right. And the question is, what does it take to get out of it, and what costs are involved, right? That's always the big thing. And as we have always had our buddy Brad Gross on these sessions, and I'm sure I'll have him back a little bit later on. I mean, he says always plan the ends, always plan the exit, right? Like, what is it going to take to get out of it, and what does it cost? Now, I've always been a fan of, hey, listen, if depending on, and hey, this is just the way I dreamt it up. Everybody has their MSAs built differently. And then, by the way, not a lawyer, but happy to send you over to Brad or somebody else. Check out your stuff. I've always said, hey, if you want out or if I want out, based on how much money you're spending, this is how much time it's going to take for me to properly offboard you. Oh, and by the way, here's the offboarding process, right?
Yep.
And that way, like, it's in writing, you agree to it up front, like, we're not going to argue about when stuff gets handed over and passwords and whatever, right? It's like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. This is the, the at day 30, at day 45, at day 60, whatever, right? Like, depending on how long the process is. But like, if you're only spending $1,000 a month, I may only need 30 days to offboard you. But if you're spending $10,000 a month, I'm going to need 90 or 120 days, right? Like, it could be something like that, right? Of course, depending on how people package in their SaaS products or hardware as a service, there may have, hey, if you cancel at this period, here's the buyout, right? It's like I'm paying my car loan off early, right? If you build it that way, then there's not a lot to argue about, right? Versus like, well, hey, you got to pay the rest of the 2 years now. I know, cable, telcos like to do this all the time. Oh, well, you signed a 3-year contract. You just got to pay the remaining months out. Here's the check right now. Here's the final amount times however many months. Like, that's a tough pill to swallow, right? And I know everybody does it differently. I know everybody has their costs, but you're going to spend sometimes more time fighting those things legally than it's worth. And I think you got to think about that as you interview or prospect, your new clients. Like, you obviously don't want to go into a bad situation, and you want to try and filter those people out ahead of time if you can.
Yeah. But this is a very sticky business. The people don't want to. They're always have fear of change, so they're really not going to offboard you unless you're doing a totally horrible job or you're gigging them.
Well, every time a new office manager or general manager, like maybe the business owner is the same, but like a new kind of day-to-day person comes in, I feel like you almost need to sell that person on the relationship because you have none at that point, right? So
That's
like,
true.
and a lot of the times those people like to bring in their people, right? And then like, that's not you. And then I've seen that happen 1,000 times. It's just kind of how things go. So I think that every time you see that change, you should definitely be proactive. Back to the sales position. Sometimes salespeople know that they're going into a bad deal and they sell it anyway because they have to hit their number. But if you have a good sales commission plan built, there's gotta have to be fallbacks built in, right? Like, hey, if the customer doesn't last long enough, I can't afford to pay you the commission that you want or are owed because it's not there, right? And like, I know every business is different, but there's got to be something in there to protect just signing bad deals.
True. But I've always made the observation that for as hard it is to be a successful salesperson, it attracts a lot of people that are very unreliable.
Yes. I mean,
everyone assumes anybody can be in sales.
That's not, they can try. They may not last very long because if you're not going to do the work and you can't actually get, a pipeline built out, then at the end of the day, you're not going to last long. And if somebody's managing you properly, you're going to find that out right away. But at the end of the day, there's also people who, don't put the time in or the work in, right? I'm going to talk to Lisa here in a second. Like, if you're not doing the calls, you're not doing the demos, you're not doing the follow-up, you're not going to close the business. That's just, in my experience, you got to do the legwork in order to get to the end game. And some people aren't interested in doing that consistently. And I think that's the big word, consistency. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, we're all human, and regardless of what capacity you do, your job title is, you have the same people within those job titles, whether it's, a doctor, whether it's, a technician or a salesperson. So I think, Brian, that maybe you're just having a really bad day with a contract, but, not everybody in sales leaves in 2 to 3 years either. I've been at,
That's the average. That's the average.
So I'm just saying, but there are quite a few people. And then it really is based on the integrity of the person. So when you are hiring salespeople, I really do believe that you need to do some integrity, Q&A questions, right? See what kind of person that you're getting.
Lisa, give me an example of those questions, because I would argue that most people have, unless they hire consistently, they don't know what questions to ask. What questions would you ask if you were hiring a sales?
I guess it would be kind of outside the sales realm and more, with respect to life. And I wasn't ready or prepared to do this. I was just getting a little frustrated, and I was going to just leave the conversation. So, might just, how would you handle a situation where, you sold the client this particular contract, and they signed off on it, went into implementation, and then the client's internal project manager or the client, had some issues with respect to what they thought that what was quoted and what was being delivered. How would you handle that? And I think based on how the conversation came back to you, a couple of those would kind of give you an idea of if the salesperson was, well, like, I would probably work with my internal technicians that are going to deliver the job and explain, how I got that quote to them and what the conversations were. Or, what, guys, that's what the client, this client, basically, this is what they wanted. This is what I quoted. I don't know what the issue is right now. And, happy to get on a call with you, but, really, we had multiple conversations. So, depending on what that answer is, the first one obviously is a little bit more integrity. I would go there, right? I mean, it's hard to find good salespeople, but I think
it's definitely I feel like an art more than a science, although
it's also hard to find good technicians too,
Yeah, that's true. But Doug says hire people with good intent, people who are about helping others.
Yeah, good intent, integrity, same thing, and the sales profession doesn't have a lot of credibility with integrity or good intent. So
I feel
anyway,
like
that's all I had to comment.
No, I appreciate that, Lisa. I like perspectives from either side. I mean, I think hiring is just a very, I was reading the other day that the big tech firms like Google and other companies, they go through a very untraditional hiring format. They feel that the traditional hiring format's so rigid that you can't actually measure that well, right? And you just kind of do this sometimes after you get the questions to your answers. I'll tell you personally, I've had some professional interviewers come through my way. They answered every question right. They sounded like solid gold. And then they came in and maybe not so much. I've definitely been, the victim of somebody who was working 2 full-time jobs during the same hours each day. And it didn't take long to figure it out, but that wasn't very good. I'd rather somebody have just been upfront about that, but obviously they weren't very, they weren't doing something good to begin with, right? They're trying to get away with that. I don't know why.
I guess also if they're more concerned with the salary than the commission as well, there's that flag too. And obviously if they answer every question with a yes, then that's a flag, right?
Yeah. I just, sometimes, you can, you try to, ask all the right questions in the world. And, the other thing that happens, and I don't know if it's just because of the current times or what, but people who, kind of obfuscate their journey, right? Like they've really been jumping around a lot more than is listed. And then they're kind of fudging the times and the dates, right? And then all of a sudden, you're just another one on that stop, and you're not, you don't even know, right? I know there's background checks and you can call for employment verification, all that stuff. I know it's whole HR conversation for another day. But I just feel like it's very difficult, right, for people who who want to actually be a little bit dodgy. They can get away with some stuff these days, and that's frustrating because with all the jobs out there and the tight job market, But I still believe that there's a lot of good people that will be the job market's going to be dramatically different towards the end of the year. I do believe that. So hopefully, you get some people who are not wanting to have a big gap in between jobs. But anyway, yeah, hiring is definitely if you act like I feel like I've been in the sandbox for the last 20 years. Like sales and marketing, hiring good people and retaining people, right, are like still in the top 10 things that everybody talks about all the time, which we have progressed through that a little bit, but I digress. Doug, did you want to share, or was it Brian? Did you want to share what that bad phone call was? I feel like you still went through it.
Oh, no, there's no bad phone calls. Just I'm cynical about salespeople.
Okay. What about
It's-
texts? What about texts?
Texts are good, or if you have a good one, they're great. You want to hold on to them.
Okay, so what do you do to retain your texts?
That's a good one. We're trying to grow our own, but we do lose them. We haven't lost a lot lately. But our environment, we got flex time, and they can, we try to treat them right. That's all I can say.
No,
They're
I get it.
small
So,
it's small enough that we have personal relationships and that stuff.
so how if I'm going to ask you point blank, and if you want to make it hypothetical, that's fine. How are you going to, like, with potentially an impending financial system on the downturn? How are you going to handle the end of the year salary increase or bonus or that conversation? Did you think about that ahead of time yet?
I've got my choices made.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you're ahead of time. Most people haven't thought that far ahead.
No, just that our business is different from a normal MSP business in that probably around 30% of our revenue is from MSP related business, and we don't do all you can eat for a price. We have them by block time. So nominal fee for monitoring, they buy block time, they spend it where they use it, and they just renew it when they get down to 5 hours remaining or something. And then we've got a elephant hunting business that we're in, large VMware SAN solution type business, which is usually high margin in about 180 to 400,000 a crack.
Wow, that's nice. Do you have escalators built in every year so that like your block time rate goes up potentially, or have you not changed your pricing for a while?
I raised it because I'm ahead of you about 4 months ago.
Oh, perfect.
Well, techs are expensive, and if you gotta keep them, you gotta pay them reasonably.
Sure. No, I get that. So like, do you do that every year, or do you kind of wait?
Just when we start looking at, what we pay a tech is related to how productive they are as well.
True.
And because some techs are horrible, they just create rework. And you have one guy that has to clean up everything. It's not fair to them either. So we look at our tickets, we look at productivity, how much money they're bringing in for us, and try to gauge it from there.
I wonder if they realize what their effectiveness rate is. Do you share that with them?
Yeah, they get graphs every week for the week and for the month.
Okay, so they really know where they're at.
Yeah.
Does that create a little competitiveness inside the company because like some people are a little bit better than others, or does that not happen?
I don't know. That's not my job.
Okay. Just different people like get to that, different places, right? Like some people try and incentivize people, and then they make a little bit of a competition. Sometimes
I'm not a fan of that, really.
Okay. You got to get what you're worth, and what you're worth on the graph.
Yeah, because what happens when I've seen that happen is they cherry pick the tickets.
Aha.
They take the quick ones and go for the quick billing. Meanwhile, leaving the more experienced people with the hard problems that might take longer to figure out.
Do you have a dispatcher?
Yeah, we're revamping that all right now.
Okay.
So we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Okay. And your techs are answering the front line.
We have one person that takes tickets
Okay.
at a time, and then they could email in as well. So,
Of
am I
course.
telling any lies yet?
No, I'm
Danny?
good though, I'm listening.
That's the guy that runs tech. Listening.
Okay. He's listening. See, I'm giving
He's
you
trying to
tips
make
back
sure I
there.
drank the Kool-Aid.
Okay. No, hey, I'm learning from you. Everybody's business is slightly different. So,
I will
I-
tell
I-
you the elephant hunting helps because I don't think you can make a lot of money just being an MSP.
some people have cracked it. Some people do. I've seen some pretty large companies who are just pure play MSP.
Yeah, I enjoy the other stuff though.
I talked to a guy today who's like MSPs, like one of the like 20 things that we do. And I'm like, okay. And like some people like kind of are the jack of all trades kind of guy. And then some people are like, hey, listen, I just want to be really good at one thing. And if you're not under that program, then I'm not going to take it on. Right. So, and then there's everywhere in between. So, as long as your business is growing and, you
Well,
feel like you can deliver the
growing
solution.
is a misnomer
Okay. Tell me why.
because I really don't care how much business I have as long as it's high margin.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I could really grow my business with the wrong business, but I could lose money.
Oh, well, I agree. Profitability, right?
So like, yeah, so growing in the sense of my gross income is immaterial to me.
Yeah,
Net income,
it's a net, right?
it's the net that counts.
100%.
Yeah.
That's the magic number. And that's how technology firms are largely, especially service-based firms, that's how they're measured, right? EBITDA, right? So, whereas software and SaaS companies have, at least recently been based off of, how fast can you grow subscriptions and how low can you keep churn down? And they really didn't care about the bottom line up until, financial problems.
Well, I think
in
all
the
those are
market.
gonna come, that's gonna come home to roost here with all these security firms starting up.
That's what's happening right now. That's absolutely what's happening right now. A lot of companies are being told you got to get profitable, and that's why people are getting cut, because almost the largest expense for almost any business is employees, right? I mean,
Next thing you know, Kaseya owned 10 security firms.
don't they already?
I don't know. They got who they own?
They bought. I was gonna say Rocket
Cyber client was a cyber something.
That's based off
Rocket
of Rapid.
Cyber. Yeah, that's the only
based
one I
off of
know.
Rapid Fire Tools. They have a SOC. They have a NOC, right? Like they've acquired now with Datto. They bought.
Well, their knock is Rocket Cyber.
They had a NOC before Rocket Cyber actually, and then they
That
took
is-
that and they expanded the SOC offering, I think.
So they bolted it on.
So, but I mean, listen, they have a lot of security products underneath their umbrella already. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
as many as we think, but I mean, they're definitely there. And now with Datto had bought InfoSight and another company called BitDam, and those are two absolute security offerings as well. So, there's a lot of security offerings, and like that's the hot thing right now, right?
Yeah.
I get it. I understand. And as it should be, by the way, because the bad guys are way smarter than they were, I feel, and they've been doing damage and getting away with it. So
How do you tell who's going to make it?
in terms of who? In terms of what?
Who you need to use to offer those services?
Yeah. How often are you truly reevaluating your vendors, right?
Yeah, well, we're in a position now. We want to look at BlackPoint and we want to look at Novanoc. But there are so many that call every day.
I think some companies, how they do it is they have a set evaluation time every year, or like they like instead of just taking all the calls all the time, they say, hey, maybe the summertime it gets a little bit slow, and that's our play time to like test out new technology and lab it and bench it, and then decide what you want to do, and then adopt something, right? But ultimately at the end of the day, there's a constant, if you're not annually reviewing new technology, I think you're not in the best place. And then listen, depending on how you decide to move forward, are you going to go 1 year, month to month, 3 year, right? Depending on how it is, that's usually your reevaluation period to some degree, right?
Mhm.
So I think that, how do you decide? I think that you should actually, just like everything else in your business, plan to test new technology out. I don't care what the interval is inside your company, and then, test it, get buy-in from your staff, and decide how do you introduce those new things from a cost basis to your customer, right? Because ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to cost money to add new products and services. You're gonna have to collect for them, right?
Yeah, we're wrestling with that now because we're in the middle of the country and everything comes here 2 years later. So, but we're noticing, it's a pretty good shock to tell them they need to buy security services. Pretty expensive, and everyone says if it's free, I'll do it. But if it's not free, and
until they see the cyber business insurance premium go
oh yeah,
300% up.
300% up, yeah. But in my argument there is that you're going to approach the point of diminishing returns, where they're going to say, screw cyber insurance. We'll just go with immutable backups, and we'll just make sure that we can recover.
That's so. By the way, I've had conversations where people are like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. I'm either going to pay the 300% increase, or I'm going to pay for all the services to not get the 300% increase. Or I could just say, you know what, I'll take it. I'll roll the dice. But to your point, if they go with the roll the dice, how long are they out of business? Right? How long is the business crippled until they're back up to functional? Right? I mean, everybody says they have everything in place, but practically, how long does it take to restore and get everything back online? That's the big question.
Average is over 30 days.
Could you imagine the business not operating for a month?
Depends what business it's in.
I would say no revenue for 30 days is going to hurt a lot of businesses.
Oh no, they can still go to the front office stuff, but they just won't be able to keep track of it unless they have pencils and paper.
That's a nightmare scenario, man.
Yeah. But if you're in distribution and stuff like that, you're completely host.
Yeah, it could. What if you're a doctor's office? What if you're a retail store? What if you're a delivery company? I mean, there's so many scenarios where you're, like imagine if your MSP lost the PSA documentation system, RMM, right? It's those three things: PSA, ticketing, documentation, passwords, procedures, whatever, and your remote access monitoring tool. Those three things crashed for 30 days. Could you run the business?
No.
I guess you could put up a shared mailbox in like Excel. I mean, you could try, but it's going to be.
I guess my point is that cyber insurance is going way up. You're going to pay those fees and pay that increased price anyway on cyber insurance.
You can mitigate that dramatically if you have the right pieces in place.
And then they're going to either get something. If something does happen, they'll read the fine print and saying, "Well, we're not paying."
It's a lot of it's based on the questionnaire, right? What did you say you had, or what did you say you were doing versus what the reality was?
Yeah, theory, reality.
And I do think that the cybersecurity companies, I was just having a conversation about this earlier this week, are now going to start to audit what you put in your questionnaires. And before an incident occurs or before a claim goes in, they're going to start to randomly, kind of send people to check to make sure that you actually are doing what you said you did in the questionnaire. And if you aren't, they could just terminate your policy.
Maybe that's the business to be in.
It's definitely happening. It's definitely growing. I told somebody, if you really want to concentrate on growing your technology business, if my advice to you, call all of the business insurance agents and brokers in your area. They're the ones that get hit with the claims. They actually take a hit when a claim goes through that they wrote that policy through their agency. They're the people who are going to be the first person to say, well, where do I go? Who do I talk to? Right. And then you want to get in touch with those people so that they can know that you exist and recommend you when that comes through, because the next claimant, the next question is going to be, did you rectify and remediate what you were supposed to, or did you lose your policy after the event? I really think that's, if you spend a little bit of time, go to Google, take like 30, 40, 50 mile radius, find the 1,500 insurance, business insurance brokers, agents in your area, and you start working it, to communicate with those people. I think it'll pay back exponentially.
Do you think those agents will care? Because they're just passing on a policy.
At the end of the year, how many claims were processed versus the amount of business they sold, there's a ratio that affects their payout.
So you think you can tell them you can go do audits for them and
No,
find out who's lying?
I think the first thing you can do is say, hey, when these people, like, number one, if your people are asking what they need to do in order to, answer the questionnaires, right? Do they have the right technologies in place? So they know where to go? That could be the front doorway. The back doorway could be once an incident occurs, they want to make sure it doesn't happen again, right? So they could recommend you as a company to work with moving forward to make sure that they have the right pieces in place. And then there's also with the larger, like, they're not the ones that are actually sending in the incident response people, right? But they can tell you who the major companies, like whoever they're partnered with, could be Erie, it could be a, Nationwide, it could be a whatever, whoever's writing the policy. They could say, here are the people in the area that actually go through and try and evaluate what happened. And usually there's a lot of incident response work. What does that mean? I'm not saying you're going to find out why the breach occurred or whatever, but they need their computers reformatted. They need their network reconstructed. They need to get everything clean, right? Get a clean bill of health. And like, somebody has to do that work. And that's the work that you're doing, right? So there's 3 ways that you could potentially benefit from, really getting in touch with those people and building a relationship. And I think that that's a big driver. And I think that's literally, it just takes your time.
Okay.
So I think you should try it. And why don't you come back and tell us how it works out?
I'll try some.
Please do. And by the way, no commission needed. That's just free advice. That's just free advice. I want to help.
Everybody knows how to make someone else rich. You ever notice that?
Hey, no, I'm telling you right now, I didn't just pull this out of the air. I know this works, right? So I'm just passing it forward, right? It's a good opportunity to, get into places that, every
It'd be good
MSP,
to get a referral from the insurance agents. That's true.
Exactly. I mean, I remember back in the day, company went down. They said they had backups. They didn't. They were out of business for a month. They had, they put the claim in with their insurance carrier. They had the loss of business, kind of coverage, as well as the cyber coverage. It wasn't even a security thing at the time. And then I was sent in as an MSP to help clear up the backup situation, and then give them the bill of health to say that everything's in place and that they're not going to have an issue with that particular problem moving forward. And then, oh, by the way, you end up getting potentially an MSP account out of it.
Yeah.
It's the same theory.
Well, sick somebody on that. Let's see how it works.
I think it could be very beneficial. And I really think that if you put a little bit of time towards it and just don't try it, like, stick with it for a little bit, I think you'll be in a good place.
Okay.
So I'll definitely come back to check on that. And hopefully you come back and let us know how it goes. Pete, I hear you're stranded in an airport. Thanks for checking in at the last second there, buddy.
I am stranded, but in every good stranded comes out an awesome story.
Oh yeah, tell us.
So my plane had a mechanical failure, and they
Wow.
automatically rebooked me to an afternoon flight. So I left on Sunday, and here I am getting ready to fly home. Well, my wife was leaving this morning from home to go to another. So my wife came off of her flight at Midway, and I was able to greet her and walk her to her connecting flight.
Wow.
Right? How's that for a little airport romance?
That's taking
So-
lemons and making some lemonade, right?
Right. So it worked out nice, and I won't see her till Monday. So it was a great little 20-minute rendezvous and totally unscripted. So,
That's life. I like it. I like it a lot.
Right?
Well, we will catch you on the next one, Pete. Safe travels. Thanks everyone for checking in. Don't forget, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1:00 Eastern time, and MSPinitiative.com for the rest of it. Catch you guys later.